if when I was 30, my father would have said, look, I did it wrong,
Yeah.
it would have made all the difference to me, but that never happened.
So, hello, Jana. How are
Hello,
you
how
doing
are you?
today?
Fine. I hope your day was good so far.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It was great that you invited me. I'm very delighted the last months. Since I'm more online with the business that I do,
Yeah.
people have been very, very forthcoming, and many people I don't know have
Mm-hmm.
invited me to speak or to join. So it's always amazing. I love the interaction.
Yeah, because what you're doing is really interesting, and that's why you are here today. You are here to share your story with us. So, for those who don't know you yet, Jana helps uh, fathers to establish their relationships with their daughters, and she has her personal experience that she has, like, she built her experience and her help to fathers through her personal experience that she's been through. And before we dive into all these things and on these subjects, we would like to know more about who is Jana and what does Jana do in life. Just general insights.
My name is Jana. I live in Germany and I'm actually German, but I grew up in Spain. That's why I always say I'm a European mix, actually, because I
Mhm.
relate a lot to Southern European cultures as well, because it's where I was made, so to speak. But my family ancestry is a lot very Northern European too. So I'm at home in both countries, but I actually now live and operate mainly from Braunschweig, Germany, which is in the northern part of the country, quite not so far from Berlin or Hanover for the people that maybe have the map of Germany now in their heads and are
Yeah.
thinking. It's not a big city like Cologne or Berlin, so many people don't know. Um, and I actually, yes, grew up fatherless. I had a normal start in life, but my parents happened to, they separated when I was 3 months old. Yes, that
That's
was
true.
it, 3 months. Because, well, at the time, my mother was very young and she just wanted to be a mom and she had that relationship, but I guess it wasn't what she wanted. So she admits today that she just left because she thought that wasn't good and decided to do it on her own, pretty much. And my father was actually there sometimes, and I know that they had a very friendly relationship, actually. But she was pretty much doing it by herself, and my father was never like super involved. And
Mhm.
once my mom moved to Spain with me, he wasn't involved at all. So, of course, thinking back now, one can, from today's perspective, where the distances have become shorter, people take low cost flights, people have the internet. That was pre internet times, guys. So, if people are listening that are very young, I'm 40 years old, so I grew up without the World Wide Web, without cell phones. We almost didn't watch TV in my house. And my father really never made it a priority to reach out to his daughter. So the whole thing resulted in me growing up and feeling quite abandoned because he wasn't really keeping touch or anything. So yes, what I do today that came after many years of, I mean, being to school, to university, I had many jobs. At the age of 25, I think I had so many jobs you couldn't fill them all in one page of a resume. So I have forgotten some places I worked in, but it always had to do with people. So I was in jobs where I entertained people, where I took care of kids, where I was in sales, always talking to people. I've worked as a public relations person. So it was always pretty much people related. And what fascinated me always was to observe people and look why they do what they do. And that resulted in me always being very involved in psychology and understanding people's behavior. My mother had a lot of education in that spectrum too, so I
Yeah.
guess I had a little bit of an influence. She was specialized in children actually, so she knew a lot more than I do. Um, and I always was very dissatisfied. I mean, I was one of those young people who didn't know what to study, so I just picked a degree. I did have no specific goals. I didn't know what to do with life, so I always had a job, but I wasn't really excited about anything. And later sometimes we repeat the pattern. So I ended up being married and divorcing very soon later. I mean, I was divorced at age 31, which is very young,
Yeah.
and with my daughter who was a toddler, and I didn't expect it to be that way, but I ended up being pretty much a single mom as well. And
Hmm.
it was then when I realized, or I remember myself sitting on the little couch I had and thinking, well, I thought I was quite smart. I speak several languages, I'm educated. How did I end up in this situation? Is this gonna stay like this forever? Like me not knowing what to do, now with a little child, having no real purpose, no career that I really cherish or expect to do anything with. So I decided that I needed to change. So I started a very active personal development journey, and I decided that something was wrong from the point that I was fatherless and that I realized I had issues.
Hmm.
And and then I found through that period that took me many years of working on myself and from within, I saw that I loved helping people and that I loved coaching, and that people often came to me asking for advice and I didn't know why. And often we attract maybe what we are and we don't realize.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate. So I started taking more classes and courses in education by myself, and I saw, well, the coaching thing is great. I always needed a job on the side and the job with my daughter, which was 24/7. And then I decided to take a bigger step and to say, look, I think coaching is great, but I haven't found my core issue that is going to make me serve the world in a really meaningful way, because there has to be something I do better and different than anyone else, because I'm unique like you are too, and everyone else. So I started networking and meeting people in the industry till I met a lady, Claudia from Switzerland, who
Hmm.
specializes exactly in that, in helping coaches find their core issue. And then she said, Jana, it's the fatherless daughter thing that you're an expert in, but you don't even know that you have so much expertise, because you're fatherless, your mother was in a sense too, your stepdad was fatherless too, your little sister was like sometimes fatherless, sometimes not. She had a different
Hmm.
constellation with her dad. So you have been investigating this thing your whole life to come to terms with your situation. That's why so many dads talk to you about their daughters that they don't see because they're divorced or they moved somewhere else or whatever. And then I decided to focus on that. And since I did, things have changed completely. So I started to go online with it after coaching offline, and I saw that people were very welcoming. They are surprised about the niche because they say, man, it's so specific,
Yeah.
like fathers and daughters and just this.
Hmm.
And I didn't know how people were going to react. And I'm very pleased so far. And it's a great adventure. I mean, I have a lot of fun doing it every day. And it's still the beginning. I mean, the best is yet to come. I'm so sure of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I personally haven't. I've never heard of. I've never heard about the relationship. Someone treating the relationship between the father and his daughter while the father has been away for some time, and we tend to put more attention on the relationship between the mothers and their children, but the relationship between the father and their children is, and specifically the daughters, is less. I mean, we don't really talk about that much. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why you have really found that specific niche to talk about. And as I said, in our society, both parents have that responsibility and that important role in keeping that balance in the family. And once one parent is absent, there is that disbalance, and it creates a direct impact on the behavior of the children, and that impacts later on the society.
Mm-hmm.
and and the family members starts acting in ways, in different ways, depending on the situation they are experiencing, and the place and the society they are living in. And we we uh, we tend to see different reactions to what is happening to them. At what age, now that we are talking about daughters, at what
Mm-hmm.
age a daughter starts feeling that gap that is inside of her, and that she is missing a relationship between her and her father?
Ah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question that
Yeah.
usually people don't ask, although
Mhm.
it seems so commonsensical. So thank you. That shows me you have a lot of common sense. But people often make it so complicated, maybe, or there is so much they want to focus on, they forget about that one. Um, well, let me point out that, of course, I cannot talk for all fatherless daughters, but I think I can pretty much give a general picture. Um, if you have lived without a dad since you remember, because maybe the contacts with your father were very scarce, or when you were too little to remember, like on your own with
Yeah.
images of your own, um, then maybe you don't miss it at first. If your mother is a very dedicated mother and you have other family members, you might not miss it so early because it's all you know. It's a scenario that is totally normalized for you. And when you start seeing other kids maybe interacting with daddies and you don't have one,
Hmm.
I guess it's that age when you start to being more conscious. It can be 4 years old, it can be six. I think it can vary a lot depending on the family members or the people you interact with and
Yeah.
how people talk about it in your home. I of course had a mother who didn't think that it was a big deal at all, so that's the way she showed it to me. And even when she knew there was a gap, she wanted me to feel good. So she told me, like, look, it doesn't matter you don't have a dad at home. You're just as valuable as anyone else. You know, you're not at
Yeah.
disadvantage. Mothers want to make you feel good. So they don't really acknowledge that you might feel there is a problem.
Yeah.
And that is an aspect I always try to also install a little bit into single moms' brains, that not talking about it or not letting the children bring that up, just saying, no, 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 it's all fine, don't worry. No, but there is a gap and they feel that something is off,
Yeah. The issue
although
is
you
real.
cannot
Yeah.
explain it. Yeah, so I remember at my age, it was when I was around 6 or 7 that I realized more consciously that this man wasn't there and he wasn't coming, he wasn't contacting, he wasn't
Hmm.
writing, he wasn't calling on the phone. Um, and I started asking my mom more often, like, why do you think he doesn't call? Or where does he live? Or doesn't he care for me to come visit or anything? And she said, look, I don't know why he doesn't call, but I guess she said, you can't expect anything from him because we don't know why he makes these choices. So it's maybe better not to focus on it too much. And if something comes from him, you can be happy about it, but it's better not to expect anything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be sad all day waiting. And she was right, but I remember having a phase where I didn't feel good at all. Um, and I started thinking that it was my fault, that I must be wrong so that he didn't want to contact me. And that's the most dangerous and tragic part children can go through, because they have a mechanism that is really wicked. It makes them figure out why it might be their fault when it's completely unreal. So you generally can trust children's feelings, but that one somehow, I don't know where it comes from, you really need somebody then to tell you that it might be a feeling you have, but that it's not real and it's not your fault at all, and there is nothing wrong with you. It's a
Mhm.
choice the adult person is making. Um, and it's bad when you realize it at that age where everything is new. You're starting to do more things at school, like 6, 7 years old. You're not a kindergarten child anymore. You want to be bigger and
Yeah.
like the grown-ups. And then you see, well, they have daddies, they do things with them. I don't. So for me, it was that age where it became more conscious. Not that I didn't have a father, but that my father apparently didn't give a damn about me.
Mhm.
That was approximately at age 6, 7, where it became very relevant on a daily basis.
Yeah. And
I
that's
know I talk a lot. Sometimes
no,
I
no,
talk
no.
too
That's
long.
really insightful.
Thank you.
You are here for that today.
Thank you.
And later on, all those feelings impact your or fatherless daughter's behaviors. So how do they react once they get a little bit older, like while in their teenagers and
Mm,
in their adulthood? Do they make uh, the bad choices, or do they chase after like relationships just to feel that they they are next to a man, or just they feel that
to
they need to fill
compensate.
in that gap, yeah, exactly,
To
just because their
compensate.
fathers were not there.
Hmm.
And
Um,
yeah.
well, in the teenage years, I think it's the point where the risks are very high that the fatherlessness issues can have very, very tragic consequences. I'm always very lucky because I can say that I had issues. When I started to read about the statistics of all the risks fatherless daughters are exposed to, and which things there are that fatherless children in general, but daughters especially, are at such a high risk at if the father is not there in any way. I was really shocked because I was, of course, part of the statistics and the data and the facts, and I had no idea. And then when I read it, I was already a mother when I was reading about my issues, where they
Yeah.
came from, and the only positive aspect of it was that I realized I wasn't on the worst spectrum, because I didn't end up addicted to drugs. I didn't end up as a teen mom. I didn't end up having sex at a very early age. I didn't end up always with low quality guys or with the douchebags seeking for attention. So I was lucky that in those extremes, I didn't fall in. And this is where I can thank my mom, because my mom was, like I told you, in a profession where she dealt with children's
Yeah.
education and development. So she gave me a lot of information and insight. And I was a late developer, which means that as a teenage girl, I mean, I started really growing in height or looking a little bit more like a young lady when I was already 15, 16. Before that, I looked like a little girl. I was not developed. I was very small. I had no curves, whatever. So I wasn't even on the spectrum of boys. So
Mhm.
that was good because it kept me like in childhood for longer. And I remember always seeing other girls interacting with guys and having boyfriends. And I always thought, well, I look like a little girl, so nobody's interested. But it was good because I took a lot of time and I was
Mhm.
not in a rush. And I never would have allowed actually a guy to come too close because I wasn't into it. But but I know that the statistics are so high in fatherless girls who also end up homeless in a shelter. And if you go to a homeless shelter for girls, for minor girls or very young women, almost every one of these girls has in common that they don't have a father. And that's very sad because it impacts their life from childhood on, sometimes from birth on. Um, and of course, that need for attention, from male attention, um, the need for male protection. So of course, maybe a guy who's the douchebag, the low quality guy that you shouldn't really be going for, but if you didn't have a male role model in the home who showed you how to respect your mother, how you should be respected by boys or teenage boys,
Yeah.
um, who doesn't show you that he's gonna be always holding your back and always protecting you if people want to mistreat you or bully you or whatever. And if you didn't have that at home in any way, because you maybe don't have an uncle who maybe could fill in
Yeah.
as a male teacher somehow, or you don't have your mom's best friend who's maybe a good role model. In my case, I didn't really have anyone. So then you maybe go for the guys that seem popular because you think, oh, they're notorious, they're popular, people seem to like them a lot, so he might be a good guy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I want to
Yeah.
have his attention too. And that's why many fatherless girls end up with very low quality guys. And what we do, which I did too for many years, is we try to do everything we can think of, even things we shouldn't be doing, so he likes us, because we think we have to be like working extra hard to have male attention, so he cares for us. So
Yeah.
we always need extra validation. We never think that we're good enough. We have very low self-worth. Self-esteem is often very low too. Um, so yeah, that's why fatherless teenage girls might engage in sexual activity way too early, because they think, well, if I give in, if I do this, he will like me, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I need to do, apparently, to get his love and affection and attention. um, but they have never seen maybe their mother being respected by a man, so how can you learn any of it? So
Yeah.
you're outside in the world, missing one part of your foundation. I always do this gesture, like
Yeah.
this is your mom's leg and this is your father's leg. It's like you're walking on both legs of
Mm-hmm.
your creators. And if one is missing, you're like walking with a stick or
Yeah.
with a prosthetic leg that doesn't always stay on. You have to figure out how to walk with it. And maybe if you do the work, if you realize you have issues and you want to figure them out, I would say 8 out of 10 maybe do. The rest of girls maybe never realize why they're always falling into the wrong patterns or repeating those
Same.
dysfunctional
Yeah.
patterns. Um, if you're willing to do the work, or you realize you have to do the work, then you see it and you say, okay, so this is not real. This is just the damage that I have and the consequences of
Mm-hmm.
something that wasn't my choice. So it's not even my fault. I can make different choices. But it takes time. It can take half a lifetime or more. And especially, yeah, in teenage years, it's a decisive time where those things, I mean, where girls should get help before they become mothers themselves.
Themselves and make the same mistakes
Yes,
again. Yeah.
because they don't know. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
going always half blind and like guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now that some fathers make that mistakes of leaving their children, whether it's boys or girls, and they leave them behind and they go live their life. And 10 years later, or maybe more, they start uh, they start blaming themselves for leaving their children behind, and they
Hmm.
want to to reconnect with their children. And most of them, they don't know how to talk to their children again. They don't know what are the steps to take so that they can recreate that or reestablish that damaged or lost relationship with their children.
Hmm.
And most of them end up being hated forever from their children, from their daughters. And after that, later on, they hate themselves, and maybe they go through, they having suicidal thoughts, and they, you know, and they
Mm.
make the situation even worse. And how do you treat those, like those cases, or how do you
To work, yeah. How
yeah,
do I work it out with them? Yeah.
with fathers who have left
Mm.
their children.
Um, First of all, I guess, yeah, we always need to take into account that the perspective of a father who, for whatever reasons we maybe don't even understand, but people always have reasons to do what they do. Um, if they really do what my father did, which was not making his children a priority anymore, always prioritizing his own personal things and checking out as a dad, basically, that's what they often do. They check out for some reason, understandable or not. Um, and the perspective of a father that did that, someone who really acknowledges it and says, wow, I really feel guilty for what I did, and now I have no idea how to turn it around, if there really is any alternative. And the thing is, if they really are the conscious ones that suddenly know that they need help, there is almost no help for fathers in that situation out there. So it's very difficult for them to be heard, because the perspective of a father who checked out is very unpopular. People don't want to hear them because they're bad. They're evil guys. So
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear about it. Um, and they often stigmatize them always as deadbeat dads, or, you know, he just didn't care. Why
Mhm.
does he need a coach? He can just call his daughter. But it's not that simple, because like you say, the bond was either broken, or, like in my personal case, never created at all. So you cannot just turn up and call that person and say, hi, I'm your father, I feel so guilty, but now I want to meet you. I mean, that is normally headed for disaster.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work at all. And actually, some dads do believe that that's what they need to do, but because there is no guidance, they don't know any better, um, and nobody supports them. And if somebody supports them, like a friend or a family member, if they don't have the experience and really don't know what they're talking about, they can give you very bad advice, but they mean well. So sometimes I have clients who tell me, well, I don't know who to talk to, because first of all, nobody wants to hear it. It looks very bad. Um, I can't date women anymore, because once the question of the children comes up, I don't know how to tell them that I haven't seen my daughter in 10 years without looking very bad. It affects their performance in the job sometimes. There is guys who live in constant pain for years, but they deny it. They live in denial, so they don't have to feel it. And if they decide to reconnect, and if they happen to find help like mine, which I've not been around for so long, maybe there is someone else. I don't really know many people, or almost anybody. I know a guy in Germany who coaches dads, but he coaches them more in the relationship with the children.
Mhm.
But it's not the same I do.
Yeah,
No,
you're
it,
more
it, it isn't
specific.
really. Yeah, so it's very difficult to find help for them. And if they really reach out to me, they show me that they actually have some courage, because they reached out, which is
Mhm.
not easy to do.
Yeah.
And then I have to first ask them a few questions, because some of them will know why they checked out. Others admit that they did wrong. Some of them have a lot of reasons they come up with why they did. Um, and if they're willing to leave their ego at the door and let me teach them a few things, and to listen and to admit that they don't know everything, then I can work with them. And I always tell them, look, I cannot do try. Either you're all in or I'm out,
Yeah.
because I don't sell you a program where you can download something and then you can work on your own. And, we
Mhm.
talk a few times, but you do it on your own. The cases are so different that I built a whole program for that person. So I put in a lot of work. That's why I always say that I don't call my work exclusive because it's like VIP or anything. I call it exclusive because it is exclusively for that person, that I build a material that suits them, that suits their way of learning, because maybe one dad works very well with videos and the other one doesn't. He needs face-to-face.
Yeah.
He needs written material. It's very, very diverse,
Different.
like
Yeah.
people. And the way to help them is often, first of all, try to break the guilt pattern. Because today I posted a little video, actually, 1-minute video that was exactly about that, that I have a chapter on most of my programs. They have that chapter about the now. And I always say that the present is called present because it's a gift, because it's actually the only thing
Yeah.
you have to make new decisions. And as long as they're holding on to the past decisions they feel so ashamed for, or that they think were right at the time, and now they can't believe they actually thought these
That
decisions were
was the
actually
right. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so they feel very conflicted at times, or are in complete denial because they don't want to see it anymore, but it affects them on a daily basis. So I always tell them, I do a certain type of training where it goes through talking, through acknowledging things, through a few exercises where they need to revise their priorities, detaching it completely from what they have done till now. Because if you let them condition what they're going to do from now on, even not knowing how the road is going to go, but they need to start. And if they start, we need to let everything on the door. And then they often don't understand and say, well, but if I get the chance to actually talk to my daughter, I will need to explain her the past. And I say, yes, but that's what you feel right now
Yeah.
because you're conflicted, but maybe she doesn't even care on the
Yeah.
first meeting about that. She cares
Yes.
about different things.
Things. Yeah.
So they need to become aware of what's important right now. They need to understand, which is not easy for them to, they can understand it here, but to apply it and internally feel okay with saying, okay, the past is gone, I need to really focus on what I have now, is not that easy for them to do because their whole pain comes from past actions. So they identify with that experience.
Yes.
And it's complex. That's why I always say I don't do coaching per hour, because I could never help a father go through that transformational process, coaching him by the hour. It's a very complex process, and he will need to be there. In the most severe cases, I work with them for 4 or 6 months in a
Wow.
row.
Yeah.
There is dads who maybe are in a divorce, which is a different thing. They maybe need like a mentorship for a month or 6 weeks to be strong in the process, to know
Yeah.
how to deal with the daughter. That's different. But the dads who really have been away for years or are going through parental alienation, which is very cruel for many dads, these are the ones who attempt suicide most of the time because
Yes.
they're just cut off and they want to be with their daughters. And with them, you need like an emergency support program, because when they're really at their lowest, but at the same time have the sanity to say, yes, I'm going to do this with you, although I feel really bad, but I know if I don't get support, I don't have any chance, so I need some specific help. And if they
Yes.
go for it, then it is a very specific help, like on a daily basis. I'm going to be like their worst nightmare, because the first months I always need to be there poking at them so they don't lose track of what they're actually intending to do. Because
Yeah.
if you leave them with all the negative thoughts for too
They will
long,
lose momentum. Yeah.
they lose momentum, they go back to the very stressful negative actions they
Yeah.
take that are instinctive. They don't even think anymore. Um, these are difficult cases. The fathers who suffer from alienation, it's very bad for them, and it needs very immediate action. But if it's been years, then the process is differently, and you can work at a pace that is actually very, very doable, and we can adapt it to their schedule also.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
in yes. Yes, please.
No, I hope it answered a bit your question. I know that it's
Yes,
sometimes
yes.
difficult for me to give a
Hmm.
very quick answer, but there is a lot on my mind.
Yeah, and that's all fine. I mean, is there an average uh, period of time that 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 some fathers need from they first contact you to their first uh, call, or to their first contact with their daughter? Like, how long could it take from
Mm,
these two contacts?
that's very, it isn't easy to give a straight answer to that because
It
every
varies.
father
Hmm.
is so different from the other that I always tell them I cannot guarantee you that in 4 months you're going to be in touch with your daughter. Maybe
Hmm.
you're not going to, or maybe it's going to happen very soon and you're going to be surprised.
Hmm.
Um, it always depends on
How invested the father is.
how invested he is. It always depends on what the bond with the daughter was in the first place. If they
Hmm.
know a way of contacting her, if they don't even know that, and we need to search. Some fathers actually have the phone number and everything, but they don't bring themselves to make that call because
Hmm.
they're afraid
Afraid
of
of
what's going to
rejection.
happen next.
Yeah.
Yes, it's of rejection, of the, that's also one thing I need to work through with them, that the first contact could go wrong, but it doesn't mean you have to stop there.
Yeah.
So with some fathers, what happens is that, I mean, I guess here a person that would understand me perfectly because they explain it better than I do is people that are in the quantum physics field. They know that really everything is interconnected, that
Hmm.
there is like, how do they call it? Like neuronal networks, that our thoughts so often match and trigger actions even in other people. So that's why when you start working on yourself big time, often you end up triggering actions in the other person, although you haven't been talking to that person in years.
Yeah.
That's why people talk about coincidences all the time, but there is rarely a coincidence because everything is connected in some way, but the connection was cut in some moment, or we did not focus on that anymore. So things grow apart. And I always try to tell the fathers, look, your view, your world and reality is that you couldn't be there for XYZ reasons. But her reality, you don't know what it has been. You don't know how the mother treated the subject. You don't know if she was allowed to talk about the father issue at home. You don't know if she had a stepfather or if she had no male father figure because the mother had 4 or 5 boyfriends in the span of 6 years and she maybe grew up without any stability in that sense. You don't know if she was bullied in school. You don't know if she had step siblings from another relationship in the home. I mean, I tell them you have to come to terms with the fact that now you don't know your daughter. So you cannot make assumptions, and that's why I never tell them, look, I can guarantee you you're going to get back in touch, but I can bring them up to a point where we raise their awareness. They start to see that it's not just their reality and what they want,
Hmm.
that they need to open up a lot and detach themselves completely from the outcome. So not to think I change now because I want that to go well. No, I change in the first place for myself.
Yeah.
And then I will let the world or life surprise me with what happens.
With the outcome. Yeah.
That's it. So detach yourself from the outcome because you're not in your daughter's head, but it is well known that every change happens from the inside out. So unless you change yourself first, you can't change your environment. So you're not going to reach your daughter if you keep being the person or the man you're now. And then some guys get very triggered with that when I tell them, look, maybe the way you are doesn't serve you for that purpose. So you will need to change.
Change.
And they Yes, and they say, but why? Why is it not okay the way I am? And I say, no, I'm not saying you're a bad person or that you're wrong, but it's like when you want to do a new business. Maybe if you always were an accountant and now you want to be in sales, you will have to change a few things entirely
Yeah, you need
to
to he
fit.
needs to readapt and reassess many things. Yeah,
Exactly. So I tell them that they need to start having less judgment or preconceived ideas about what the outcome will be, because it might be completely different. But that's why it's difficult for them to commit, and why I have also many clients that I can't take on, because they're not ready to do that work,
yeah,
because it's going to be hard work that is
yeah.
often uncomfortable to do. Um, but I think, I mean, for many of my clients, they like talking to me about it because they know that my father was a very bad example, but that I turned myself around so that I don't hate men just because my father was a bad example.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that I'm very tolerant and that I won't judge them for
Yeah,
past decisions, but that they are the ones even judging themselves way
themselves.
more than I never will. I mean, I never will judge them because it's past, and if
True.
they're here, it means they want to do something
They want to
different.
change, then yeah.
Yeah, and I know how their daughter might feel. That's also a big, I guess, a big help for them, because they can trust quite a lot that I know why the daughter is mean or doesn't pick up the phone,
Yeah,
um or feels very hurt because he wasn't there to protect her when she got bullied in school. I mean, I went through those things too. I know.
yeah. And from your personal experience, did your father try to contact you or reach out to you in a moment in your
No.
life? Never.
No. Well,
Okay.
a few times in the past, but my father was really the one who did everything wrong that you possibly can do wrong. That's why I can help fathers so well, because I know what the worst case can be of totally giving up, not wanting to change at all, not wanting to apologize, not
Mm-hmm.
wanting to acknowledge that you did wrong. So all that I have. Um, and what my father did was actually, when I was 18, he showed up on my door without previous notice or warning of any sort. Um, and when I was 18, you're still like a big teenager, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Yeah,
Your emotions are really raw. You can feel a lot of anger
absolutely.
and rage. You know, that's the age
Mm-hmm.
where you think you can either change the world or, I don't know, throw a chair out of the balcony because you're angry. You know, your energy is just bursting
Mm-hmm.
and unlimited in a way. Um, and when I was 18, I remember that before that, the only times I had ever seen my father consciously was at a wedding when I was 7. Not because he came see me, because he was in
Invited.
between the guests,
Yeah.
invited,
Mm-hmm.
like my mother and I were. So I saw him there, and my mother said, look, if you go along with her, you know, she's on summer vacation, you can take her for a week if you want. We're staying in Germany 1 more week.
Mm-hmm.
And she was always very generous. And I remember he said, okay, fine. So that's the only time in my life that I could stay with him for a week. It was at his mom's house. Um, but his mom never really made any effort later to that to make any contact with me. So she was also very disinterested. But the week that I was there, it was fine. But of course, it wasn't a real thing because I was never there. So he would just give in to everything and make that week for me very pleasant. But it wasn't going to last. And I guess he
Mm-hmm.
knew. So that was the only time. And then I remember when I was 11, 10 or 11, he came once to visit in the area, but just because he was on vacation with his girlfriend in the area, again, not really with the purpose to visit only me. And then I remember he came by, and I was a bit reluctant to go with him and that lady who I didn't know, to go anywhere with them. I didn't want to go with that lady. She was a
Mm-hmm.
stranger.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom needing to argue with him, like, look, can you not understand that she doesn't want to go with your girlfriend because she's a child and she doesn't know her? The situation is very awkward. You're never here. So, you should adapt for a bit. And then I remember he adapted and he took me somewhere, a park, somewhere where you could have fun with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And one time more, soon after that, also we went to Germany. He was there. I mean, it was like 3 or 4 occasions from the age that I was born till age 18 that I actually remember being with him somewhere and spending a little time, but I never bonded.
Yeah.
So there wasn't the same tolerance you might have with your dad, that you say, okay, the man is not perfect, he has many flaws, and sometimes he acts totally silly, but he's my dad.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
my case, I never could say, but he's my dad. It was like, no, he's really not stepping up to the plate. This guy is totally nuts. I can't even take him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So then imagine how unconscious you need to be as an adult man to just knock on the door or ring the bell from your daughter's house, and you don't even know who's going to come open.
Mm-hmm.
Could be the mom, but it could be your daughter herself. So
Yeah.
sadly, it was me, myself, and I was completely in shock, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good decision for him to make. And of course, I went like half shocked and afraid, went up the stairs to find my mom and tell her who was there. Like, come on, help me, save me. The situation is so awkward.
Yeah.
Like, I want to disappear. And my mom was so kind that I remember it was a day she had made a cake. And she said, well, if he wants to, he can stay and have a coffee and eat a piece of cake. She was always very, very nice, too
Mm-hmm.
nice. And I said, well, okay, but you don't go. You stay here. You don't leave me alone with this person. And she said, no, I'm staying. And I remember that went bad because, of course, he sat down and wanted to start talking about himself and why it was very understandable that he couldn't be there. So he was justifying himself and his actions. And he didn't even ask once, like, were you actually okay while I wasn't here? Did you always have food?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any sort of, trouble that I could have helped with and I wasn't there? Or how was your childhood with me not really showing any interest? So, and that's actually the worst you could do and the worst way to approach the situation. And that's what I always try to avoid for the fathers I help.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them the experience and I say, look, can you imagine a little girl sitting there and being totally shocked and being angry, and you don't even let her speak? You try to justify yourself because that's what matters to you. So it will go wrong. You're
Yeah.
please not going to do this. We're going to set up a plan. And if it's a father that doesn't even have a plan because the daughter isn't even in the picture, he doesn't know how to reach her, he mostly first needs to heal himself and heal his father identity and know that he's still a dad, although
Yeah.
he wasn't there, and that he has neglected that part of himself and he
Mm-hmm.
needs some recognition from himself and some
Yes.
appreciation, and to see that he can have some worth and that it's late, but it's maybe not too late, and that he can try something different.
Yeah. It's
And
never too late.
it's never too late. And of course, we never know how the daughter is going to react, but it makes all the difference to say, look, I'm 30 years old maybe, and the first time he got in touch with me, I was very reluctant and I didn't want to. But you know what? Now I matured and I actually want to call him because
Mm-hmm.
now I know I could handle it. So you never know what comes out of it.
Yeah.
And after that very silly action my father took, I, of course, didn't want to get in touch with him again because I was really angry by what he had done. Um, because he actually left that scenario. I mean, it's difficult maybe for people to picture, but can you imagine they just invited you to coffee and cake? They let you sit on the table like any normal guest. Nobody was rude to you. They just straight away say, okay, sit down, whatever you want. And then you end up leaving angry because you guys don't understand me. You're not nice to me. I'm
Mm.
going. So he even makes you feel guilty
Guilty for
because
not,
he's
and yeah.
going. So that's actually the worst thing you can possibly do. And well, that shows me from today's perspective that he has a really narcissistic personality disorder, because that's what these people with this disorder are about. They cannot see other people's needs. They're like toddlers throwing a tantrum. And the next time I got in touch with him, it was me who did it. He never tried again. And I was 27, 28, and I tried to reach out. Somebody gave me an email address. And you know what happens? I start to think about it. Weeks later, somebody comes up without me asking with a piece of paper and says, this is your father's email address. Maybe you want to reach out.
Wow.
Things happen. Yeah, things happen for a reason.
Wow.
So yeah, and it happened. Why? Because I changed something inside. I cannot explain it in any other way. Why didn't that piece of paper come 3 years before? It didn't.
Because you're not thinking about it.
And I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't have any intention. But then I sort of thought, maybe, maybe it's time. Maybe I should try, because I'm smarter than he is. So maybe I should try. Yeah,
And
that
wiser
was
as
my,
well.
yeah. I said, look, in German language, they have a say, like, the wisest one is the one who gives in. Like, you give the other person a pass because he's not able to do it, but you are. So that's what I thought. So I did. And later I ended up moving to Germany when I was pregnant with my daughter 2 years later, after I started being in touch via email multiple times. And I ended up moving to the same city I was born in, which is where I live now. And I ended up living in the same house he lives, but in the apartment below.
And you know that at the time, or you were aware of it?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I happened to find an apartment there and not somewhere else. And I was pregnant. I needed a place to settle, like, right now.
And
And
it
I
was the
remember
only place
it
that
was
you
the place I found,
wow.
yes, because I went to see him, like, to say, hi, I'm here now. And then I remember telling him, well, I'm looking for a place. And he asked his son. I have a few half brothers from his side. And the youngest one, I didn't even know him. He's like 14 years old, 14 years younger than me. So he was a teenager back then. And he said, Dad, don't you know the apartment below is empty? And he said, well, but I guess it's already rented, because in this area is a very nice place of town. They rent the things again very quickly. And he said, no, it's empty because they're renovating and they don't really need the money. I guess they're waiting. So these people were very nice, and I didn't have a job. I was 7 months pregnant, waiting for my husband to join me. So it was all very unstable, but they said, look, we like you, and your father is a nice person. If you want to have the place, you can have it. So I ended up there and thinking, this cannot be possible. I'm in a kind of movie I don't even understand. So it was very, very awkward, but I lived there for several years. So I was able to be in touch with him quite a lot. But till this day, I couldn't really reshape a bond that was pleasant enough, and he still doesn't acknowledge, he still hasn't apologized properly once for not being there, for not trying, for giving up. And that makes all the difference. So I always tell the fathers who feel that it's too late, because they say, my daughter is 30. And I say, it doesn't matter. If when I was 30, my father would have said, look, I did it wrong, and I should have understood that it was plain wrong and it was so unjust to you, and I'm going to try to the best of my ability to make it right.
Yeah.
It would have made all the difference to me, but that never happened. So I know the difference very well.
Would it make a
And that's,
difference if he does the same thing right now?
it would, yes. I mean, I guess because so much time has passed, from my side, I must say the need of rebonding isn't even there that much anymore, because I had 10 years to experience his presence not that far away from where I am.
Yeah.
I had a few conversations. I tried very hard for a certain time. And let's say sometimes you have to forgive yourself for not doing better, because sometimes we tend to blame ourselves that maybe we should try more or we should do better. But the thing is, which is a very important point, the daughter or the child is always the weakest part in the constellation, because I didn't make the choices. So no matter if your daughter is 10 or if she's 30, you need to pick her up pretty much where you left her as a child,
Yeah.
because there was a task unfinished. So I always felt that although I could have done more, but at a certain point I wasn't that interested anymore. I mean, he wasn't that important to me like other fathers to their kids, because we never bonded. So
Mm-hmm.
I expected a certain action from his side that never came. And I think everybody's responsible for their own actions. So he should, take
Yeah.
some responsibility and be accountable. And when I saw that he wasn't willing to do that at all, I thought, well, let's take this I don't know, just take it as it is, as an experience. And when I started the coaching programs for the fathers, I saw that actually that was the thing I could thank him for, because he did all these actions that are wrong and non-productive. But now
Yeah.
I know, because of his failure, how to do it for the others, how to show
Yeah.
them a way that is better, that I know will work. And yeah, that's how sometimes the people you despise the most can be your best teachers to build something entirely different. So I
Absolutely.
thought, yeah, and I thought, look, all this experience cannot be for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't go wasted, like for nothing, with no purpose. So I'm much happier now that I see, yeah, I can help others with the experience I had, with which was at times very hard and not pleasant at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is no coincidences. So this is why I'm supposed to be doing. That's why I decided consciously that this is what I was going to do with my life from now on, accepting all that comes on the way. So I don't know what the future holds, but I would love to write a book or two. I have many ideas for that. Um, I would love to work overseas, um, even more, because
Yeah.
I know there's countries like the US, like the UK, that have very, very discriminatory laws concerning fathers that still have no rights just
Mm-hmm.
because they were not married, that are fighting very hard. Um, so there is a lot of help to be given to
Yeah.
dads, and I think dads should be acknowledged as the powerful and very relevant family members that they are. And somehow it has become okay in the last decades to make fun of fathers, to not acknowledge them, to say that
Mm-hmm.
they don't really matter. And I learned as a kid that they didn't really matter. That's what my mother thought, that it was
Yeah.
just fine. And later on, I saw that that whole narrative was really very far from the truth.
Yeah. I have a question. Do you ever get in touch with your daughter's clients before they make the first step, before their fathers get
To
in
be
touch with them?
honest, yeah, to be honest, till now, it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been the case because it wasn't needed. Nobody requested me to do so. I focused a lot on helping the fathers have the moral support and prepare with them mentally so they could do it on themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
my motto always is, I help you so you can help yourself, so you don't need me.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, I would. I mean, I don't say never, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe if the case is there where, I mean, those things I normally see intuitively. And if my intuition or my gut would tell me, look, maybe in this case it would be better if you reach out first, like from a professional perspective, so she is not emotionally attached to you
Yeah.
and maybe will have an open ear,
Mm-hmm.
I would do that. I actually have thought about it, but till now it wasn't needed. And most of the fathers actually get in touch when our coaching work is done. So the few times that it turned out this way, because there was very different outcomes, it's like they tell you later, and it's yeah, very very special feeling.
And what are the chances for the father to get rejected from their daughter?
Mm, again, I don't have any numbers to that would be reliable, but it happens quite often that the
Mm-hmm.
first contact doesn't go that well, especially with daughters that are teenagers or really young and still haven't figured out what happened to them.
Yeah.
They're often not that receptive. Um, but the good thing is also, I mean, that's the downside, but the upside is that they're still young. So there is a lot of improvement and chances to work on it. I mean, and it's not an easy road. That's why I always tell the dads, I cannot guarantee you. Maybe you're not going to get in touch in the next 3 years, but you will have come to terms with what happened to you, actually, with the choices you made. You take a personal and self-growth road that is a work nobody can take away from you. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
makes you stronger. It makes you, I mean, there is dads that actually redefine their whole priorities in the process.
Mm-hmm.
They start filtering out people that are negative for them. They start learning about how to be present. That can make them improve their professional situation because suddenly they learn tools they can use everywhere.
Yeah.
They start doing better with certain friendships or recovering friendships that were gone, and they suddenly see, oh, that person, I maybe should follow up on that person who was always important to me. Some start doing better in romantic relationships because they have, they had this big bag that they were carrying, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it's gone and they can be a different kind of man. um the confidence improves a lot, so it always gives them a foundation from where to figure things out from. And I mean, they always say, like, look, it's such a special work that even if the outcome is not immediate, you can't pay for it with money because it's so valuable that you then can make different decisions because you start from a different place than you were before. So I
Mm-hmm.
never can guarantee any results, but if they don't do anything, just because I cannot guarantee the results, nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
It's like you take the risk, you just jump into the pool,
I
and the
mean, they
ones
have nothing to lose.
that's it, they have nothing to lose. I said, I asked them beforehand, like, what have you done so far to improve your situation? And some of them have gone to therapy, others have been reading books, like, to self-educate. And there was one dad from the United States, an African American dad, a very creative, lovely guy, and I didn't even know who he was. And then I found out that he was quite famous in some professional field, very sensitive guy. And he said, look, I've been reading books about parenting, about divorced people, about so many, and it got me so frustrated because, like, it showed me everything I didn't want to know. It made me feel bad about myself because I thought I had been doing everything wrong that is in the book. So it didn't really give me an alternative, like, what do I do with this information? So he stopped reading the books and he overworked himself. He became a total workaholic, not to numb himself from the
Mm-hmm.
pain. He had a very difficult constellation too, because he had been alienated. And for him, it was also like, why not try this? If whatever I have tried didn't work, I have nothing to lose. And it's
Yeah.
an investment in myself, it is. But I mean, it will not hurt you. You will not do worse after that, although we cannot guarantee what the outcome is going to be. But I mean, I think I haven't had any conversation where the outcome was so negative in the end that they said, oh, I regret doing this. I mean, no way.
Yeah. This is a really, I mean, this topic is so interesting. I have so many questions going on, but
Of course.
I think I just give you like one last question, and how we've been talking about fathers and daughters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fatherless daughters. How can like a husband or a man deal with a fatherless daughter? Like if it's his wife, if his wife was a fatherless daughter,
Yeah.
uh, and sometimes fatherless daughters have some specific patterns, some specific behaviors that may trigger their husbands or their
Mm.
companion. So has ever anyone or any husband reach out to you to help him out with his relationship with his wife who was fatherless daughter, or with his with his
A
partner?
girlfriend, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, I mean, I must say that the questions are very good. It's not what I usually get asked. It's very good. Thank you,
You're
because
welcome.
it's much more fun even and colorful this way.
Yeah.
Um, this is very interesting because I haven't had coaching clients in this section, let's say, but I get a lot of messages through Instagram, for example, from guys saying, look, I mean, the first one, I was very impressed. It was back in March when I had merely started my Jana Herde coaching account, when I decided to go online with the work. And a few weeks in, where I wasn't even sure about how I was going to do the profile, should I do more videos? I was just randomly doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy writes in private message on Instagram, a very long message explaining to me how he's divorcing his wife because she has so many issues from being a fatherless daughter that he couldn't deal with it anymore. And he was very sad about it because he said that he tried so hard to understand her and to support her, but that she wasn't even conscious about her issues and that they came from there, that it was impossible for him in the end to deal with that. And the marriage just fell apart and he was divorcing and he had children. And I told him, well, of course I would be happy to hear that you guys could figure something out. But he said, look, I've been trying for years. It's been 10 years of marriage and the years before, like before we got married. And he said, her self-worth just doesn't improve. She constantly feels that she needs to be extra validated, that like she isn't worth it. So she's always doing silly things to feel approval from my side. Like, yeah, and of course he said like she needs a dad, but I will never be able to be her father. I'm not her father, I'm her husband. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the thing is, he didn't get or find any help prior to when it started becoming really difficult. And that was the first message I got of this sort. And I was very impressed because, I mean, these guys who write in and they tell you so many very intimate personal details. I mean, I always thank them for trusting me because they don't have to do that. They don't know me. But there we maybe it's a symptom of so little help in that department that once they find something, they just write it in
Mm-hmm.
because they need to let it out. So I'm always very impressed by that. And then I have had a few more who said that they had girlfriends who had been fatherless or divorced children with very difficult absent dads, and that they feel that the girls have issues, but they can't really pinpoint what it's exactly, or if they have to do something, or if the girls will just be fine. Um, so it's an interesting topic, and I always, when I do live sessions, I always say that, of course, young men who don't have kids, but they are interested in these issues, they're very welcome to listen and to ask questions because they can be a very good help too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say that a fatherless daughter who reached age 20 without being addicted to substance, to any substance,
Yeah.
without a teen pregnancy, who's maybe like me on the luckier spectrum, um, it's very tragic if she falls for the really low quality guys, because if she lacks self-worth and she always needs approval, and she really, all she wants is to be loved and to be valued, and she's willing to do so much and to put so much effort in the relationship and very generous just to get approval, the wrong guy will use that for his own advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So if a young woman has 2 3 relationships of that sort, of course they end up even more damaged, and they're emotionally totally exhausted by the time they maybe find a guy and they have kids. And what is she supposed to do then with her kids if all her experiences have been that men always use me for their benefit, and I don't even know why, because I feel that I'm always doing everything that I can possibly, but the self-respect is not there like it should be. So many fatherless daughters end up being single mothers or end up divorced because, well, they like go back to the state they grew up in. It's like inbuilt almost
Mm-hmm.
in your genetics. It's very ugly to talk about it like that, but it's the ugly truth. That's why it's so difficult to break the cycle. And yes, I mean, young men talk about it and they ask questions, which I think is very positive and very interesting, that they have interest in the topic. They figure out somehow that she might have the problems coming from there, and how could I help? So I always tell them, a fatherless daughter, can be such a caring and kind and loving person. And if you're a good guy, you're not going to take advantage from that. You're going to really build her up and say, look, you don't have to feel that you're not enough. You are enough, and it's all good. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do extra work to make me happy. You don't have to do special things or be afraid to lose me tomorrow because you didn't do well enough. It's just fine the way you are. um that's, yeah, that would be a way to help, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is something even I have. I even today that I'm 40, there is many moments where I really well, I in the end, in my mid 30, I was 36 when I met my actual steady partner. We lived together with my daughter, but it took me many years to meet again a person that I could commit to. um and he's of course a very caring person. um and I guess he knows because he's a very perceptive, very smart person, always smarter than I am. But well, you gotta look for people that can teach you something, so it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes I know that I'm in that mode, that I just need a hug, like I would have gotten that from my dad when I was a kid. That unconditional uh, love and care that you would get from a parent that loves you unconditionally, no matter if you just messed up or said something stupid, or you just don't know, but you don't feel right today, so you just need that emotional presence. You just need the person to be emotionally available. And maybe women that are not fatherless say, oh no, but that's universal to all women. I don't know. I think it is kind of different for us still, because there is a little part of us that never really grows out of the daughter that didn't have a father. I really believe that a small part is still there.
Mhm. Yeah. I think
Mm.
it would be also interesting if you will like create sections for uh, to coach fatherless daughters themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like that you will create like a balance, coaching
Mm-hmm.
fathers who left their daughters, and coaching fatherless daughters as well, so that at the end
Mm-hmm.
you will create like a, a
It's a
balance.
combo.
Yeah, in the society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have had a few conversations already with fatherless daughters who were raising children alone, and they saw my content and realized that they were in the healing process and that they needed guidance. And I, of course, told them that it was awesome that they reached out. And a few of them, I have talked to them for like an hour, hour and a half. They were always very grateful that I didn't charge any amount. And I said, no, I mean, I told you, this is a free conversation. I won't charge for that. And well, I have the clients that I invoice. So I always say there is always room for the people that maybe that day just need a little bit of an exchange because they never had an exchange of that sort. So why not be generous and give it in that direction? Um, and I had a German lady writing in July, and she actually wrote in because she heard me on a podcast that I was invited to from a lady that is a coach in Germany, and she coaches families who have toddlers. And she invited me in because she coaches families where the husband also sometimes has a daughter from a previous relationship that he doesn't see often. So that they have the problem there also. Although the coaching is not about that, but the thing always comes up. Like, yes, we have problems because the toddlers are throwing tantrums all day. There is a lot of anxiety in the house. And, you know, he's got a daughter that he can't see often, and that is an additional problem.
Yeah.
So then she said, oh, I should invite you to my podcast. And I didn't know her at all. I met her through another person, and she has this podcast that is on iTunes and like everywhere. I didn't know. And we recorded it also through Zoom, and then she converted the whole thing. And the lady who wrote in said, I heard you on her podcast and I would need your help. We're three sisters, all three fatherless.
Wow.
And we want to reconnect with our dad, which we know. We were in contact at some point, but somehow not anymore, and we don't know what has happened. He seems always disappointed. He doesn't communicate with us as much. Can you help us there? And I said, yes, I need to talk to you guys to see if I can help and how. But yeah, that's been very interesting too, that fatherless daughters start calling in or writing in through the website.
Yeah.
It's mostly through my website people do. It's just like me, called janaherde.com. And there they have the little, they have in 3 languages the website, and they always can fill like a contact form where I always ask about the time zone, because sometimes they're wherever in the world, and then to find an appointment to talk, I have to consider where they're located.
Yeah, the difference time zone. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just get the emails and I can see them and see if they just want information, if they're sure they need help and they really want to know what their options are. It's always very, very colorful and very different. But definitely, I mean, the fatherless daughter topic is very important. And I start having more followers also on Instagram that are women that always say that they're fatherless themselves or raising fatherless daughters. And they want to know how they can do good for their daughters without a dad. They don't want to make fatal mistakes.
That's really interesting. I mean, all this, I'm so grateful for this conversation today. It's been really interesting. And for people who are listening to this podcast, where can they find you, or for anyone who wants to reach out to you, what are your contacts?
Thank you. No, I'm very glad I came, and I'm very pleased that, you know, a young man like you is so interested in the topic. I mean, many people are interested but don't ask the questions that go so deep. So I think that's awesome. It's been very fun.
Sure.
How to yeah, how to contact me. Yeah, like I said, the platform where I'm most active, where I share the most free content so people can get to know me and see what I'm about and what I do, is through Instagram, just at Jana Herde Coaching. Everyone can find me there. They can send a direct message, or also that is linked also in my bio on Instagram is my website, janaherde.com. And there they have the website in English, in German, and in Spanish. Those are the languages I mostly coach in, although
3
now it's
languages:
quite a lot
English,
in
Spanish,
English.
and German, right?
That's it. So they can see the website in those 3 languages, and there is a contact form a very easy one. It's really not complicated or too long. So they can just write in, and this is the best way to get in touch, because then I don't lose track of any message, because it's an inbox that is specially for that. So I always respond maximum in 48 hours. That's the longest I take normally to get back to the people and say, hi, let's set up an appointment, or here is the information you need. And then on Facebook, I also have a page that's called Jana Herde, like me. My name is, if somebody's just listening, maybe Jana, Jana, and Herde, my last name is Herde, Herde.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit difficult to understand for people that are not used to German German names.
Names, yeah.
Yeah, and on Facebook you have that page too. I'm not always on that page, but there is always active postings and content, and there is a group there. I have a Facebook group, Jana Herde Coaching Fathers,
Mm-hmm.
and this group, they have to apply so I can let them in. So it's a closed group. And it's pretty new. So there is now, I think, 6, 7 people. I just came up with this quite recently. Um, and it's going to be like a safe space where fathers can also exchange contacts and be in touch and discuss things
Yeah.
with dads that are in a similar situation, or maybe some dads I coached already that want to share the experience. And I've decided that from now on, I'm going to do more content and interaction on this group, and also live sessions, so the fathers can also interact and or give their, I don't know, share their story
Their
with other
experience, yeah.
fathers. So they have a little bit of a community and a network, because they don't need to feel so alone. That's what I always tell them. There is many fathers like you. You're not alone, and it's good for them to have a network
In the
of
community, yeah.
dads. Yeah, so I'm starting that too. These are the main ways you can reach out.
Oh, that's amazing. Any last advice that you can give to fatherless daughters, or to fathers, or to uh,
Mm.
partners?
Um, yeah, first, just to tell people that the fatherlessness issue um, has been relevant for so many years, but let's say since the 60s, since the big patterns or traditional family structures changed big time, it's been increasing. And that although we hear that narrative still very often, that the mother is like the main person, that
Mm-hmm.
the bond between mother and child is sacred and shouldn't be ever separated or threatened, which I agree with. I mean, I'm a mother, of course I know what they talk about, but to think that a father isn't as relevant is just wrong.
Yeah.
That it's not an opinion. It's to say that he's not relevant, or that he's just somehow relevant. A father is not a bonus
Mm-hmm.
that you add because it's nice to have the dad in too. And if you think that, you're actually against all facts and data, and against all the literature that actually states the obvious, and it's that fathers are essential to children's development. Even there is even very reliable numbers of how the risk of losing a child in the first trimester of the pregnancy is much higher if the father is not involved. How even the first months of survival of a child after birth, the risk of not surviving the first, I don't know if it was 8 or 20 weeks after birth, the risk of dying of the baby was higher
Really
also
high,
if the
yeah.
father was not around. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it has a huge impact because it has an impact on the mother. And if we help fathers, we can help the daughters or the children. If we help the daughters, we can help them break the patterns. So if you're a father, a daughter, and you have an issue with that because you went through it yourself and you need help, reach out. I guess I hope there is more help than just mine. My help is very specific, but don't think that you can't change it, because you can. Don't
Yeah.
think that it's too late, because you can do
It's not.
something.
Yeah.
And that the worst thing you can do as a dad is to just give up and don't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really the worst thing you can do.
And always people should reach out for help.
Yes, I mean, don't feel afraid or ashamed to ask for help. Um, and I know that, I mean, even on social media, it's awful how fathers get backlash from women when they say, oh, I found this lady coach who's really helping me deal with the fatherless daughter that is fatherless because I wasn't there, because I'm now, learning new things. And they will laugh at them. That's why most of them never share
Yeah.
that they work with me openly, which I don't mind. I mean, that's why there is a confidentiality clause in my contract, because of course I would never disclose their name or anything, but they shouldn't feel threatened by what other people think,
Mm-hmm.
by families or friends who say, oh, you just should call your daughter. That shouldn't be that complicated. Sometimes you need maybe specific help from somebody who's not your friend, who's not your family member, who hasn't got any emotional attachment to you.
Yeah.
And so someone like me, or maybe another person who does this too,
Yeah, especially professionals.
yeah, they will actually focus on you and your life and your results. They don't
Mm-hmm.
care about your friends. They don't care about your girlfriends. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah, they're
So
neutral. They see things
that's
from,
it.
yeah,
That's
their
it. So
emotions are not involved. And
yeah,
yeah,
and we won't judge you. And that's what
yeah, that's the
many
most
divorced,
important. Yeah.
separated fathers need. Yeah, they need, some of them say, I never talk about this with anybody
Mm-hmm.
in years. So they don't even discuss the details with the partner that they have, maybe because it's too difficult to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So
The fear of
so
being judged.
yes, and
Mm-hmm.
they know it's a problem, or they don't know how to fix it, so they better don't talk about it, because
Mm-hmm.
they say, what's the use?
Yeah.
Why put people in a bad mood if I can't solve the problem? So
Mm-hmm.
they just put it in a box like it doesn't exist. But that's why you can benefit a lot from specialized help. And I really always have to say, people don't even care about what my degrees are or how I do this. They just care about the help or the result.
Yeah.
And as long as that coach or professional can give you a result, it doesn't matter how he learned. It
Yes.
really doesn't.
It doesn't matter. The result is what matters the most.
That's it. And how you feel about it, and if it gives you something positive
Mm-hmm.
to work from there. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't, not one of my clients has ever asked me, where did you learn this? Or did you go to a school? And I always say, well, yeah, I have a university degree that is not about this, but you know what I learned there? To watch people's behavior,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I was into personally, to watching what people did, although
Yeah.
it wasn't a degree of psychology. I know people that have gone through therapy 2 years, and I have nothing against therapists, but there are therapists who are good and therapists who are bad and really
Yeah.
incompetent,
Mm-hmm.
who will tell them every 2 sentences, and how do you feel about that? But that's not helping them on the specific issue.
Mm-hmm.
And fatherlessness, or being a father that was absent, is something that is really difficult to understand or to handle, even for a therapist, if he has no
Idea about
no
how it feels
connection.
like. Yeah.
He doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's not even blame therapists who could not help you with that, because it's just not what they specialize in. Maybe they all
Yeah.
mean well. And that if you work with a coach or an advisor or whatever, you're not our patient. That's also a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a patient, and you're not treated as somebody who needs to be fixed. Um, and that's why you should ask for help. There is
Yeah.
nothing to fix. There is just some specific work to do,
Mm-hmm.
so you can help yourself, and never think that it's too late.
Absolutely. I mean, for all the people who are going through any kind of difficulties, whether it's relationships, whether it's like with their self-esteem or with their confidence or whatever it is, my advice for them is to reach out for professionals. And if your problems are more specific, there are some professionals who treat like the exact same thing that you need or that you are uh, lacking, like
Yeah,
just like you are doing. You are really specific in what you are doing, and you give help to many people. This
I
was
hope.
really, yeah, I can tell that. I'm sure you are. This was
Thank you.
really interesting, Jana. I'm so grateful for having you today. It was really interesting topic to talk about, and I hope people out there find some help in what we just discussed today. And I encourage people to reach out to professionals. And if ever one of my listeners here today has same uh, troubles that we talked about, just feel free to contact Tiana, whether on her Facebook page or her Instagram account or directly from her site janaherde.com.
Hmm.
So she is open. Feel free to contact her, and don't hesitate to reach out and to talk about what you are suffering from.
Yeah,
Yeah, and don't be afraid of being judged or anything. Just put your, and there is a sense that you said earlier, if you leave your ego at the door, then we
that's
can
it.
work. Yeah,
Yes,
that
that
is one
that
of the
that's really
problems.
it. Yeah. No, and that's why I always tell people, even if you think, oh, I don't contact her because I'm sure I couldn't afford her services, don't think about money. Reach for help first,
First.
because maybe what you think is expensive is not. Maybe
Hmm.
you have invested in a coach before, and you think that we all charge the same. I mean, I never know what does cheap or expensive mean to you, nor can you know how I
Hmm.
build my programs and what my recommendation is going to be for you, because it's not the same for every father.
Yeah.
But sometimes only one conversation can already help you to see if you're in the right direction, if you could improve. It's never negative to just try and reach out. So, yeah, I encourage everyone to do that too. And it was a really great conversation. Thank you so much for letting it be so fluent. And people, we didn't plan this, but I think it's awesome because you had very good questions
Yeah,
in store
I mean,
that normally people don't ask me.
I never put my questions before any interview. I just leave it, like, go with the flow,
That's
you know.
good. Yeah,
I believe it's more interesting like that when it's less scripted.
yeah. No, so thank you so much for the invite. And if you ever want to touch a similar subject again, or, I'm up to it
Yeah,
anytime.
sure. Thank you so much, Shanna.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
wonderful
good
day.
day or night. Yeah, have a nice time
Have
and
wonderful,
see you
nice, I
for the
believe.
next one.
Yeah, thank you.